Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're going to Masech the Ksuvas daf Lamed Daled. We are going to begin on the very bottom of Lamed Gimel Amud Beis. So we were introduced to a Gemara which talked about if a person would be Chayiv Geneva and Tvicha Mechira, which in itself by one would be obligated to pay Arba B'Chamisha, 4 and 5 times the value. However, not only did he do that, but also he either did this for Avodas Kochavim, or it was a Shor HaNiskol, or a person did this on Shabbos, in which all these things there is a connection to Misa. So in this situation, it says that Mishalem Tashumi Arba B'Chamisha. Rameir holds that you still have to pay the 4 and 5, which apparently, as we said, goes against this concept that even though Rameir holds that you could be Malkum Mishalim, you can have both. He doesn't apply Kiri Rashaso for that. But when it comes to Misa Mishalim, so you don't have to pay. The question is over here, it's clear that you do have to pay Arba B'Chamisha, even though you're going to be Chai Misa. So we said, no, we're talking about it was done Toivech Halidi Acher, someone else did it. Now, even though we say in Shliach Davar Aveira, this is an exception that someone could do the Shchita and you'll still be chayiv to have to pay the Arba B'Chamisha. So the Gemara says, Iba Toivech Halidi Acher, Mai Tamai Rabbanan. So if someone else did it, so then why would the Rabbanan say you're Pater? Rameir seems to be more logical. Mai Tamai Rabbanan, the Patri. So Man Chachamim, as we continue to Lamed Daled Mad Aleph, what does it say? The Chachamim is referring to Reb Shimon. He says that if you have a shchita in which it's not fit for eating, that doesn't count. The whole purpose of shchita is in order for a person to be able to afterwards eat that meat. And therefore, since a person, let's say it's Avodas Kochavim, or we'll discuss Shabbos as a question, which we'll see, the din is that since you're not chayav daled b'hei, because it's not called a shchita, and therefore, according to him, that's the reason why it says you're potter from daled b'hei. It has nothing to do with who's the one that did the shchita. It's just telling the fact of what its purpose was for. Fine. Now, atino avodas kochavim. Therefore, according to this, I can understand why avodas zara, because avodas zara is certainly something in which is not acceptable. So Rashi says the zivche mesin asurin because it's asur b'hana. The Shor HaNiskol also, Rashi says, the shemiglar dino asur b'hana, from the time, as it's brought down in Baba Kama and Psachim elsewhere, that once the animal is, there's a gemar din, a verdict that it's going to be killed, if you would still shecht it, even in the most proper way, it's still asur to eat. So therefore, I can understand that's a shchita shenu ruya, and that's the reason why you're not going to be chayiv according to Rav Shimon. El shchita Shabbos shchita ruyahi. I understand, even though of course you're not allowed to do shchita on Shabbos, but it's still something that can be eaten, as we see as follows: that nan hashaychet b'Shabbos uviyam kippurim alva b'shnim mischayim b'nav shchita sakshera. So the person who does the shchita, and it's a good shchita, of course, that person has violated Shabbos or Yom Kippur. The person would be Chayiv Misa for doing this on Shabbos. It's still a good shchita. So why do we say it's a shchita she'eina ruya? So Savaluk Rav Yochanan Sandler, because according to the shita of Rav Yochanan Sandler, he actually holds that if a person would shecht on Shabbos, it's considered to be a shchita she'eina ruya. Desanya Hamavashel b'Shabbos. Let's say a person cooks on Shabbos and he did it inadvertently. So in that case, you could eat it. But Mezil Yoichel, then Rameir says that once you do something on Shabbos b'mezid, you are not allowed to eat it forever. Now, that doesn't mean other people can't. Rashi says, Cherim Yisraelim Oichlim. Other Yisraelim could eat it. Just the one who did the actual malacha, a bishul, that person is not allowed to eat it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says, it depends. B'shoigeg Yoichel l'moitzi Shabbos. When a person would cook on Shabbos b'shogeg, he's not allowed to eat it until after it's already Motzi Shabbos, because we don't want this person to be able to derive any benefit from the fact even it was cooked b'shogeg. Therefore, we don't want like a chayt nisker to be able to eat on Shabbos. However, b'mezid lo yochel lamas, if he's the one that did it, then it could never be eaten, according to him. He can't eat it. Rabbi Yochanan Sandler Omer b'shogeg yochel motzei Shabbos l'chem v'lo lo. He's even more strict. If it was done b'shogeg, then you it says yochel motzei Shabbos l'chem v'lo lo, which means you can never eat it, but some other people could. But here's the key line that we're bringing this down for. So according to Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, it's a shchita she'eina ruya. If a person is mavashal or does any malacha for that matter, including shchita, you are not allowed to benefit from it ever, and no one else is allowed to benefit from it ever. And therefore, it's a shchita she'eina ruya, and that's the reason why holding like this opinion is why on Shabbos, if a person would do the shchita, you'd be pater from dal v'hei. So my time to Rabbi Yochanan Sandler, why is he so strict? Ki the dorish Rav Chia a pischa de benasiya. He darshaned in the opening of the house of the Nasi. The pasuk says, "Ushmartem es Shabbos ki kodesh hi lachem." You're supposed to keep the Shabbos because it's holy. So ma kodesh aser b'achila, af maseh Shabbos aser b'achila. Just like something which is kodesh in itself, which is hektish, you're not allowed to eat it. It's something which is put on the mizbeach. So too, any of your actions that you do on Shabbos, which you're not supposed to have done, you're not allowed to eat. So that's how he derives it from this pasuk. If that's the case, ma kodesh aser b'hana, av maseh Shabbos aser b'hana. So not only a person is not allowed to eat something which is kodesh, you're allowed to get hana from something which is kodesh. So we're going to extend that also when a person does the malacha of cooking or shechting, you can't even get hana from it. So Talmud Melchem Shalchem Yeh. So the fact that the pasuk says lechem, so that tells you that it's not aser b'hana. So yachal feel b'shogeg. We think the stringency should even extend if a person would do a malacha b'shogeg. Talmud Melchem Mechal Leh Mos Yumos. A person who's mechal is Mos Yumos. That's b'mezeh marti loch. So of course the Isser of Mechal Shabbos, in which the penalty will be a death penalty, is only if it was done b'mezid. And therefore all this is only speaking about b'mezid. Rashi says Masa Shabbos b'mezid asur min Torah b'achil Rabbi Yochanan Sandler. So pligi bo Rav Acha Ravina. So it's actually a machokus between Rav Acha Ravina. Chad Eimer Masa Shabbos deraisa. Some say that the actions on Shabbos, there is on b'mezid, there's an isser min Torah to eat it. Echad omer d'Rabbanan, and some say that it's only a din d'Rabbanan they are not to eat it. So man de'omer d'Oraisa k'de amran. The one who says that is an isser, a pasuk from the Torah saying not to eat it, is like we said before. The pasuk equates doing malacha, a maseh Shabbos, to kodesh. So therefore, it's a din d'Oraisa not to eat it. Mandi Amar Rabbanan Amar Kra Kodesh he Kodesh Vein Maseh Kodesh. The Shabbos itself is Kodesh, but not its actions. So therefore, it's not coming to compare it to Hektish, but it's just saying that it's a holy day. And Shabbos is Kodesh. Shabbos is like Hektish, is holy. However, it's not comparable in the fact that if a person would violate it midoraisa, that you wouldn't be allowed to eat it. Midorabanan, we still say you're not allowed to eat, but midoraisa is okay. So according to the one who says that it's a din d'Rabbanan, so then why would the Rabbanan say it's pater? Rashi, the peligi ad Rameir, who patu mekanas arba b'chamisha. Why would they say that you don't pay arba b'chamisha? Hoyel b'toiveach alidei acher o kimta. We said that someone else did the shchita. Ha shchita royehi midoraisa. So the whole issue is because the shchita she'eina ruya lo shema shchita. But over here, if midoraisa, you could still eat it, so that's considered to be shchita ruya. So therefore, again, how do you understand the shita of the Rabbanan, which we established as Rav Shimon? But if the whole reason why a person is pater is because it's a shchita she'eina ruya, this is not a shchita she'eina ruya. So kika pater Rabbanan shara. So they'll have to end up saying you're right. That when the Rabbanan say you're pater and dal v'hei, he's actually going on the other cases of a person who shechs for avodah zara or the shor niskol, but not for Shabbos, because you're right, midoraisa you could eat it. So now we try to understand this a little bit better. A person shechted for the sake of idol worship. Now, kiba neshachad b'porta, once a person does the shchita, even the smallest action, the littlest amount, itzurla. So, idoch, ki katavach, lav demori katavach. So, when a person does the slightest amount of shchita, so at that moment of shchita, then the item becomes aser. So therefore, the question is, once it's already become aser, he's already shechted something which is not his. So why would, in fact, this be considered to be a shchita at all? Because it's, in order to do a proper shchita, you have to have shechted two simanim. As Rashi says over here, kivan shechad lo siman echad asra. That as soon as you shechted one siman, it becomes aser, and therefore it's not yours anymore. And Rashi says, umikmei the mati gemar shchita. Before you completed the act, it's the rabahana al baleha. You already are not allowed to derive any benefit from it anyway. Umahi shaita, and from that moment, afsida mine, it's like lost to you. The isa lo hadr be'ene v'lav damarihi. So you should be putter from dal behei for avodah zarah. This is not yours. So Merava ba'omer begemar zvicha hud ovda. So this person was like really firm to make sure to be following this exactly to be to be chayiv. He said that I do not want the avodah zarah to be chal, for it to be for l'shem avodah zarah, until I finish this zvicha. So therefore, even though normally, you're right, it's the second you began the action, it's aser b'hana. But over here, since you made the stipulation, so therefore it's only b'gemar zvicha. And since it was b'gemar zvicha, so therefore we say it was yours all the way up until that moment at the gemar shchita, and that's the reason why you're going to be chayiv dal behei. Shor and niskol lavdidehu de katavach. Same question. It's aser b'hana. So if you shech the shor and niskol, so why would you be chayiv? So omarabba hachma miskin going shemasul l'shaymer. You gave it over to someone to watch this animal, the hizik b'veis shaymer, and it did damage in this person's domain. The nigmar dina b'veis shaymer. Also, the gemar din, the verdict that this in fact is a shor and niskol, happened also in the domain of the beis shaymer. Ganavo gana b'veis shaymer. And then afterwards, a Ganav stole this shor haniskol. Rameir savar Rabbi Yaakov, savar Rabbi Shimon. What is that? Savar Rabbi Yaakov dermer af mishen nigmar dino hechziro shem labal muchser. Even after there's a gemar din on this animal, which basically means it's also bahana, but technically, if the shomer would return this ox to the original owner, that would be considered acceptable. The fact that he gives it is good. Says Rashi, Di Armalei, Torah ashalmtli, Torah ashlimaslach. Basically, an ox you gave to me to watch, and this ox I'm returning to you. So technically, the shomer is able to return this ox even after the gemar din. That's point number one. Furthermore, the savar lo Rabbi Shimon Yarmedever Hagara Mamomin Kamamandami, says Rashi, Bahanami, Afa Gavdoli Shavimidi, even though this ox is worthless because it's also Bahana, nonetheless Garim Mamunhu, the Chilesa Boila Shlumi Le Turam Alya. Since the shomer could have given it back as is, so it's like money, even though it's really worthless, since it's already past Gemar Din. Because if he wouldn't give it back, then he would have to give him another ox. So therefore, we say davar garma maman kamamadami. It's like it has value, and therefore, for that reason, even though it's true when he shechted it, lav damari katab. It's lav didehu de katabach. It's like it's not his because it's also bahana. It doesn't matter because of davar garma maman is kamamadami. Okay. Rabba oimer lu'olam b'toivech alidei b'toivech alidei atzmo. So now we're going back to our original question. How is it shaykh that you could be chayiv for dal v'hei and also for misa? Must be because Rav Meir is of the opinion that you're Mishalem Tashlumi Arba Chamisha, because maybe the din of getting two punishments is not just by Malchus and Mammon, but even by Misa and Mammon. So we end up saying, no, it's Taveach Al-Yacher, there's two different parties, so one is Chayiv the Dal Behei, and the one who did the actual action is Chayiv Misa. Here he's saying, no, it's the same person did it. So we see he's Chayiv and gets two punishments. So how do we reconcile this? I thought Rameir says he shouldn't get two punishments in this case. As we continue to Lamed Daled Amud Beis, Rameir loika mishalem islay. Rameir holds that a person can get malchus and pay, which we established. Mesu mishalem leislay, and as we said before, he will not make a person get the death penalty and have to pay. So what do you mean? Over here we're saying he's chayiv dal behei. Bishani, but it's different. Hani the chidishu shechid shetayred b'knas. Here there's a special chiddush when it comes to the dinim of knas, which is paying above and beyond what you stole. Afagav the mikdol mishalim, because the whole element of knas is a chiddush. Why should you have to pay more than you stole? The fact is that since we're giving you an excessive punishment, so we're going to say, fine, when it comes to a din of knas, you could actually have both misa and mishalim. However, if it's just a case of mamoin, not a case of knas, that to pay back that which you stole, for example, the Karen, so then maybe in that situation, he would say, you don't have to pay that. You would only have to pay one and not the other. Let's say a person on a weekday stole a kid goat, and then afterwards, a couple days later, Shabbos rolls around, and he violates Shabbos by shechting it. So he did two things wrong. He stole and he violated Shabbos. So chayiv. In this case, he's going to be chayiv dal behei, shekvar neschai b'gneva, because he was already chayiv for having stolen the object on a weekday, kodem she'avli yidei iser Shabbos, before he violated Shabbos. Ganav v'tavach b'Shabbos, but let's say he did everything on Shabbos. He really had a bad Shabbos. He stole on Shabbos, and he shechted the animal on Shabbos. Potter. She'im ein geneva in tvicha ve'ein mechira. So what does that mean? So first of all, if you look at the top Rashi, Rameir ba'alma b'tashlumi mammon leislei mesu mishalom v'hacha b'tashlumi arba v'chamisha kenas. As we said, paying 4 and 5 is something above and beyond. The whole mishpat kenas chidishu. The whole concept of paying more than you have to is a chidish hilkach. Even though you're going to be killed, you're not potter from the kanas, you still have to pay the kanas. So why in this case do we say he's potter if he stole, shechted on Shabbos? So Rashi says potter, the kaimulan ein mesa mishalim. He holds you don't have to pay and be killed. V'kivan the akarin lo mechayev kanas nami lo mishalim, because he would be chayiv for having stolen it, which is, there's an element of Karen, the actual principle, of course, is kefil as well, but in it is Karen. So the chayiv of returning it only took place on Shabbos. You stole it on Shabbos. And once there's no din Karen, so we say you also don't have to pay the dal behei afterwards. Why? So Rashi says this in more than one place here. Once you don't have to pay the kesed, the mamoin, which is because he holds, when it comes to misa, you don't pay mamoin, you would pay kanas. But if they both happen on the same day, the same time, because you stole it on Shabbos, so therefore you're not going to, now al kimim Rabbi, no, you're going to be chayav misa, you don't have to pay the mamoin. So once you don't have to pay the singular one thing you stole, so now there's no chiyuv of anything else, because the Torah says you pay 4 or 5. It doesn't say you pay 3 or 4. So therefore, because you're putter from paying the Karen, so too you're going to not have to pay anything else. That's what it means. Imagine a person had this goat stolen, and he shechted it, wasn't on Shabbos, but he stole it, and he shechted it in a machteres, in a tunnel. Now the Torah tells us, Boba machteres, unless it's your father who is the one who is tunneling inside to get to your house, well, you're usually concerned that that person doesn't care about your life because they're putting themselves out there in danger, realizing that a person may defend their property to the death. Therefore, when you find someone in a tunnel, you basically are allowed to kill them because you could anticipate they're going to kill you. So in this situation, you're almost like Chai Misa, if you will, the second you're found in Machteres. You are fit to be killed. So therefore, but since you stole before you were in the Machteres, so therefore you're going to be Chayiv because they didn't happen simultaneously. However, let's say in the tunnel is someone's Gedi, and you steal it right there, so you're going to be potter for the same reasons we said before, like on Shabbos. As Rashi says, since you're allowed to be killed, you could be killed in a Machteres, so therefore, because of that, there's no din Karen, Mammon, because there's no din of Misa and being Mishalim, regular Mammon. So once that takes place, there's no Dal V'hei, because, again, as Rashi once again says here, Ein Mechoyev Kanas, the question is, why do you need both cases? Why do we need a case of stealing and shechting on Shabbos, stealing and shechting in a Machteres? Seemingly the same idea. More says with Tzricha, because when it comes to Shabbos, that's an Isser Oilam. Rashi says, Kol Zman She'ido Love, someone testifies Shechil Shabbos that you were Machal Shabbos 4 days ago, and it's a Wednesday. Yamisuhu Bastin. Bastin can still sentence you to death. Hilka Chamira Misa Dila Lapaiter Mamamin. So Misa, in that case, the punishment is so strong that even though Shabbos is over, your violation, your crime you committed was a while back, you can still be Chayiv Misa when witnesses come. And therefore, that's the reason why the din is over there. The only time a person can be killed is if you're physically found in the Machteres. Once you've left the Machteres and you're walking around in the middle of the street, so no person is allowed to kill you anymore because you're not violating or trespassing, and because of that, maybe the din is different. Now, the Machteres mishum de Machtarto Zuhi Hasrasa. Interesting that you don't need Hasra. If you're in the tunnel, the fact that you're there, you should already know that you are potentially going to be killed. So actually, even without Hasra, this person who owns this property has the right to defend themselves and kill you. So we're very lenient, if you will, that you could still be killed. It's lenient for the person doing the killing, but it's very strict for you. Even with a Hasra, you can be killed. Okay, let's see question 1. So my time to Rameir, if you shechted for idols, why does Rameir say to Mechayev Afalpi Shtimiyad Nesra Vlav Didei Kotavach? My time to Chachamim the Poitrim. So Rameir says, we're talking about a case of Begmar Zvichahu Uvda, that you had in mind that the Avodah Zarah will only take place after you finish the Shechita. The Chachamim say, like Reb Shimon, Chachamim is Reb Shimon, Yom Shechita Shein Roya Lo Shma Shechita. It's not considered a Shechita, and therefore because of that, you're not going to be Chayiv. You're only Chayiv Dal B'Hei if you actually do a Shechita, which you could eat, but you can't eat this. Okay. Back in the Gemara. Omer Papa. Hayisa Par Genuvaloi. A person has this cow that was stolen. Hayisa Par Genuvaloi. V'tavcha b'Shabbos. Similar to what we said before. And then later on, a person shechs this para. Now this is the chiddush. Let's say a person has an ox that was borrowed. Someone borrowed your ox, and obviously the purpose of it was for them to return it at some point. So haisa para She'ula but tavcha b'Shabbos potter. They shechted on Shabbos potter. Why? Says Rashi, that he shaited the katavach la gazel law. You're allowed to borrow this, and you could do whatever you want with it, but you're not allowed to shecht it. Once you do an action of shechita, that moment is you stealing it. And therefore, since at the same time that you stole it is when Shabbos, you violated Shabbos, so therefore you're going to be potter, because as we said, you're going to be potter for the Karen. And again, we only say dal behe, not gimel b'dal. Armalei Rav Acha berei de Rav Ashi, Rav Papa para slash mina. What's he talking about? We talked about a case of a gedi. Now we're talking about a para. You can talk about all different types of animals. Why would we make a chiluk? So Armalei Rav Papa, no she'ula slash mina. It's come to tell you the chiddush it was borrowed, which was not mentioned before. Safadat ramina hoil. V'yam Rav Papa mishas mishichahu di'eschayev la b'mezonaseha. He says that the time in which a person does mashicha, once you pull this animal, you're chayiv to pay for it, pay and sustain it. So too, the time in which you borrow it, you're already chayiv b'oinsin. Kamashmon, says Rashi. Hachinami nema mishash elo rami lechi of Karen. Maybe not the time you did the shechita, you're going to be chayiv Karen, but right away, right when you borrow it. You could always return it at any time when it's in its original status. And therefore, it's only when you shechted that you stole it. Let's say over here, instead, it's your father is involved with his borrowed cow. So mishtalmin law kol yemei she'elata. So the kids will pay all the days of its being borrowed. Fine. So Rashi says, kol yemei meshach hazman she'sha'el yavihin min habalim. All the days in which he borrowed this from the original owner, he has to pay. Mesa, if it dies, in chayavin ba'insa. They don't have to pay any oinsin for the oines. Says Rashi, the inhu lav she'ol ninhola. They're not the ones that borrowed it. So what does this mean? Ksvorin shel avihin. Let's say they originally thought that it belonged to their father. They didn't know that it was their father borrowed it, but instead they shechted it, which again they weren't allowed to do. So mishalman demei basar b'zoil. So in this case, they have to pay back its value in meat, which is the cheaper. Fine. It's brought down Perek Mishemes, Ba'or Yachziu L'Balin. Fine. Haniach lehen aviyin achrayis nechasim. Let's say the father has achrayis nechasim. He has karka, he has land. Rashi says karkais. Hayam l'shalim. So they have to pay him. Ikidamasni la reish, ikidamasni la seifa. Madamasni la reisha. Says Rashi. If he has karka, he has to pay back. And he has to pay back for any oinus. Because the father's possessions are connected to that. Says Rashi, where he actually did the shchita. So therefore, Mane Masla Reisha Koshkin Seifa. Upligid Rab Papa. Now argues Rab Papa, says Rashi, the Oimel El, as we said before, he shaita the Matula Oinsin, who the Asachiyubala have a loy mishas she'ela. That it's not at the time that you borrowed it, but from the time that the Oinus took place. So it's arguing with that opinion. Umani Masla Seifa of a racial of a Rab Papa. Now Bishon Rav Yochanan racial Lakish. I can understand why Rabbi Yochanan doesn't like Reish Lakish to come moikim like Rabbanon, because he wants to establish our shita like the Rabban. Says Rashi, what does it mean? Bishlam Rav Yochanan mokim asnisim b'shelo hisurboy. We said our case of our Mishnah, going all the way back to Chavtes, is why is it that there's no Malkus? Because, and there's only Kanasis, because there was no Hasra. If there would have been Hasra, would have given Malkus. So the reason why he doesn't want to establish it like him is because he wants to establish this like the Rabbanim. So he'll say, Kivan de'ilu asur be potter. If you would have given hasra, you'd be potter. Kilo asru, so you'd be potter having to pay the kanas, as Rashi. Kilo asur be nami potter. Hoya be ikasad malchus. So kilo asur be nami potter. V'yazol tamayu the chiyasa rabdimi omer chayvi misas shaygigin v'chayvi malchus shaygigin v'dever acher. If you have a situation where you have chayve misa shaygig, a person is should be chayv misa, but he did a b'shaygig, or a person should be chayv malchus, but he only did a b'shaygig, v'davar acher. Rabbi Yochanan omer chayv. So he says in that situation you're chayv for tashlumin. Reish Lakish omer potter. So Rabbi Yochanan omer chayv dahalo asur be. The reason why you're chayv to get tashlumin is because you were not given any hasra for the misa or for the malchus. As Rashi, ve'ein ato machaybo el mishum risha achas to b'mamoin. So there's only one punishment. There was no hasra. It says there was no hasra for the malchus, so we give you the mammon. Reish Lakish Amar Potter Kivan de'ilu asur be Potter. If you would have given the person hasra for malchus, he would be potter for the mammon. He'd also be potter for the malchus because it was done b'shaygeg. So kilu asur be nami potter. So the fact that there was no hasra, you're also potter from the tashlumin. So it's interesting. The reality is he doesn't make a distinction whether or not there's hasra or not, even without hasra, because if there was hasra, you would be potter from paying. So now that there was no hasra, you're also potter from paying. The pasuk says, "V'lo ye'asan anishi anish." So when it comes to a person who hits and then he hurts this woman, however, she wasn't killed, but she had a miscarriage, so there's a chiyuv of having to pay. So even though there is this element of potential misa, but nonetheless there's a chiyuv mammon. As we continue, Lav and Ham and Alf, my lab asan mamish, says Rashi. Im lo mesa isha, that if this woman doesn't die, ye anesh, that you'll be punished. Hanoigef b'dmei vladais, so you're going to have to pay the monetary value of this child. Ha'im mesa, if she dies, lo ye anesh, you would not be punished. If feel lo hisrubai, even without hasra. The kash Rav Yochanan. So he says lo din asain. Says Rashi hachakamer kra. Im ein mishpat maves l'noigef kikain shlo mesa isha. If let's say the woman doesn't die, mesa, she dies v'lo hisrubo anishi anish, and there was no hasra. So he's actually saying no. It means in the event where either she doesn't die, or if she did die but you didn't give hasra about this, then he can't be killed because there was no hasra. Instead, we're going to have him pay. He'll have to pay. That's what it means. Some say Esav Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish Lo Ye'ason Anish Anish My Love Din Anais, and therefore again without hasra the din is you pay. Ran says Lo Ason Mamish, and therefore he's saying no, it's not true. In the event that there was no hasra, you would not have to pay. All right, we're going to stop here. Let's see question 2. Omra Papa Haisa Par She'uloy Tfach B'Shabbos Pater My Kamash Papa. So if a person borrowed an animal, and then he shechted it, so the din is on Shabbos that he's going to be potter from paying the dal of the hay. The question is, of course, because it all happened at the same time. What's the chiddush? So on this we said the chiddush is kivan the mishas meshicha. From the time you borrow this object and you pull it in your direction, you're chayiv to feed it, right? You're chayiv b'mizon yiseha. So Eimanami his chayiv b'oin seha. You should also be chayiv in any onis that happens to it. Therefore, b'chi tavcha b'Shabbos l'chayiv. Therefore, later on, when you actually shechted, you should be chayiv, because you already were chayiv b'oinsin all the way back. Kamash one kivan the whole kama the isa, as long as it's still around, hadr b'einei. You could always return the animal as it was. Therefore, he shaited katavachla, when you shechted it kagazala. That was the time in which a person is violating it. and like they stole it, and therefore at this point it's not an issue. Okay, I think we already did these questions, but let's see. TA 17. Ganav b'tavach b'Shabbos Rameir Machayev dal b'Hei v'Chacham Poitrin b'man nechu Rameir b'Rabbanan. So one shot is whether shchita sheina ruya or ika kimud ramine b'Knas. Do we say kimud ramina when it comes to dinim of Knas? Question TA 18. Ganav shor haniskol v'tavcha misham tashim yarbe v'chimish ma'adu misham harilav demar katavach, but it wasn't yours. So again, it was talking about a case of hizik v'nigmar dino b'bei shaymer or gnabu b'bei shaymer, and we hold that even after gemar din you could return it, and davar hagarma mamoin is kamamadami. That was TA 18. TA 18. So let's put this down here on the bottom of Lamed Dalid. Lamed Dalid. Lamed Aleph. This should say Lamed Dalid, Lamed Aleph. TA 18. So let's just make sure we mark this down. Savala Av Mishmar Dino Hixer Shaimel Baal Muxer the Savala Karshim Diam Devergam Kamamadami. Okay. TB 20. So it sounds like the same question. Either Rameir holds shchita shenaruya is shma shchita, Chachamim say it's lo shma shchita, or Rameir holds the chiddush shechit shetayra b'knas the mesim mishal Chachamim poitrim kima ben Rabbi. No, adkan.